why the elbows up strategy is probably one of the worst things Canada could do at the time. The recent posts I'm seeing on social media and people virtue signaling through gutless symbolism about how tough Canada is reminds me of a video I saw somewhere in Asia where a dog comes up and starts barking at a sleeping tiger, and the tiger ignores it and then eventually gets up and just kills the dog. Like, making references to past world wars doesn't make us tough. The Liberal government has spent a decade demasculizing all of our institutions, undermining our defense architecture, not focusing on the border and focusing instead on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and virtue signaling. Our country is a mess. Our military has almost no capacity to influence the world, and we've created a generation of people who are not tough. So to post elbows up, we're tough, that's not gonna cut it, my friends. The United States of America is the most powerful military ever to have existed in the history of humankind. It also has the biggest economy in the history of humankind. We are their ally and northern neighbor. We need to get along with sleeping giants. It's not the time to pretend to be a tough guy, whether or not it makes you feel good in your work because you love to attack Trump. And by the way, if those people who attack Trump, let me give you a piece of advice. And there's a few of you out there who know I'm speaking to. Don't take Trump literally. Take him seriously. But the people who won't do that are the people who are so insecure about their own status that they live to tear down the president of the most powerful country in the world, who got elected with a strong majority by his populace. He has a mandate to do things, and one of his mandates is to hold his allies accountable to make sure that they're treating the United States of America fairly. And if that upsets you, well, go home and cry in your bathroom, but come out and say, okay, let's look at this rationally. From Canada's perspective, we have a $50 billion trade surplus with the United States, the sixth biggest trade surplus of all of the countries that do business with the United States. $50 billion. Canada imposes tariffs on the United States. Take dairy, for example, in some cases up to 250% tariffs on American dairy products if they come in to Canada. We have to be aware that this is not a one-sided world where Trump is bad and Canada is amazing. We have been taking advantage of the US-Canadian economic relationship, and that's okay. That's what we should do, up until the point that somebody goes, wait a second, you haven't been paying rent in my house for a while, so now you got to pay rent. And when they ask you to pay rent, you don't accuse them of being barbarians. You look at it and say, hey, can we make another deal? Canada is a member of NATO, and I hear so many people in the Canadian ecosphere talking about NATO, alliances. Andrew Coyne, this author, he's completely deranged about Trump. You can't criticize the United States and NATO from a Canadian perspective if Canada doesn't put 2% of its GDP into NATO. Do you know how much we put into NATO? Around 1.3%. And a lot of that is wasted on non-operational expenditures. So we're not pulling our weight. We're living on the umbrella of security that the United States gives us. Our coasts are supported by American warships and naval vessels if something was to happen. We can't patrol our northern boundaries. We have no idea. We do not have control over our own borders if somebody wanted to infiltrate them right now. We have to wake up to that fact. Our security is inextricably tied to the United States. And so to have somebody write an article about we're going to buy warships from Korea, where's Korea going to be when the chips fall down? They're not going to be at our doorstep. They have their own issues to deal with. They might just want to sell us equipment. What I would say, if there was rational people in charge of the Canadian government working with the United States, is saying, hey, look, we understand your concerns with the border. We are now going to start taking that seriously. How about we reignite our shipbuilding industry, which we used to have a wonderful one, and say, look, we want to build 50 to 100 icebreakers who could patrol the north. And then tool up that old shipbuilding industry and have the Americans buy our icebreaking ships. That could be an amazing way. Then we ask the Americans to set up observation posts up through our northern territory so that we can make sure we know who is in our country. But this elbows up nonsense is designed purely to make people who are insecure about themselves feel tough. And yes, if you put 5 guys on the ice from Canada against 5 guys on the ice from the United States, Canadians are a tough bunch of people when they've trained to be tough. If you take 5 random Canadians out of downtown Toronto and put them up against 10 random Americans from Arkansas, I have a feeling that the blue-haired baristas aren't going to win that fight. We need to be thoughtful. You don't go to war with the most powerful country ever to have existed. You can't win it. They can outlast you. They can damage us. Trump is known to punish people who take him on. That's just a reality. You might not like him, but he's running a goddamn country. He doesn't care about pleasing his inner circle of delicate flowers. He's not interested in what you would say in your lawyer's lounge as you clink glasses and say, oh, I really admire the protocol and what you're talking. He's running an empire. We have a country we need to run, and it's not about this false politeness that we think we have to have. Trump has written The Art of the Deal. He knows how to do deals. You might not like him, but he knows how to make deals. He told Panama, I want that sorted out, and Panama changed their tune. There's no more Chinese purchases of land along the Panama Canal, and American ships go through the Panama Canal for free. America built the Panama Canal. In the 1970s, Jimmy Carter gave it back to Panama. Trump said, that's nonsense. We invested 25,000 lives, equivalent of billions of dollars to build that. We should have some control over it. Like, he's done this time and time again. And with Canada, what I want to say to the tough Canadians out there is he's not attacking you. He's not attacking tough Canadians. He's attacking a government that has weakened one of his closest allies to the point that he says to you, look, you guys might as well become the 51st state because your government is useless. Your government has undermined all of your institutions. You have no unity. You don't stand for anything anymore other than public apology tours. And he says, if you can't get your crap together, you might as well join us and you can have a higher standard of living. He can say that without you having a meltdown or wetting your pants. Right? We can say, hey, no, thanks. And this is where Pierre Poilievre has really let the conservative movement down. I was talking to some advisors, and he was going to go on Trump, but he was told he was going to go on Rogan. And this is where you have to almost lament for Canadian politics. He was told you can't go on Rogan because Rogan endorsed Trump. So you have the most popular podcast in the world, millions and millions of eyeballs, and Joe Rogan wants to interview Pierre because he thinks he has a lot of good things to say and have a 2 to 3 hour discussion. Do you know how much money you would have to pay to get 10 million people, 20 million people to watch you speak for 2 hours? It's unfathomable. But he was told, don't go there because Rogan endorsed a political person that might upset Canadians. That's cowardice at its core. That's not going to get you elected. You can't play defense in Canada at the moment if you want to take back the country and get us on a path to being a strong country again. Right now, we're incredibly weak. That's just a fact. We don't need hockey metaphors of elbows up. We need jiu-jitsu strategy. Leverage points that allow you to maneuver around a slower or bigger opponent. Elbows up is self-serving. Please don't listen to what the media, traditional media, tells you. Traditional media just wants to make Trump into an ogre. And it's easy to get you upset and so want to think that this is something huge. But if you can't talk about what the actual tariffs are right now, and I went into the LCBO and I wanted to get a California cab. I like a California cab. And about 6 people came up and go, you can't support that. I'm like, the LCBO is provincially sponsored. This is Ontario's biggest liquor purchaser. It's already bought the wine. It's paid money to take it off the shelf and put it into inventory. So now that money is sitting there not earning. Plus, if you sell a bottle of wine that's $25, probably $14 to $13 of it is tax that goes into Ontario coffers. So you're not getting the tax. You're sitting on inventory for what? To make it look like you're tough? Nobody really cares in California if they're doing our wine. It's not going to affect foreign policy. And Ford putting a tax on electricity is something we need to be very careful of. Because there is a thing called the law of unintended consequences. And I tell this to people who want to be tough guys sometimes. If you see somebody being a tough guy in the street, you might stand up to them, but you don't know if they have a knife. You don't know if they'll do something to hurt somebody close to you. Right? So when you act like a tough guy, you never know what can happen. And when you act like a tough guy, you better be able to finish the job. And I fear Ford, for all of your toughness, and the Liberal Party, for all of your bluster, you don't have the force to finish the job. We need to be smarter and stop virtue signaling.